This is Show Up as a Leader, a show from People Forward Network, helping you maximize your positive impact on the world by becoming your best, fully authentic self.
Hey everyone, it's Rosie. Say if you are going through a tough season, if you're having a challenging day so far, whatever time of day it is, if you've just had some stuff that has not gone your way, I'm just going to tell you this is going to be a bright spot. And even if you're already feeling fantastic, this is going to make you sparkle even shiner. This conversation is so full of wisdom, heart, common sense, bright positivity. I'm just going to say full of sparkle, even though we don't really talk about sparkle. And it's just something that I think is going to be a boost and some tangible things that you can think about to just bring your life to the next level, personally, professionally, and all around. I sat down with Scott Tavlin, who is a nationally recognized motivational speaker. He's an award-winning radio host, and he has this Dare to Dream series, which helps people on an individual level, on a team-based level, really move past that self-doubt, what I like to call the head trash, and really turn it into purpose and impact. And he has such an amazing story of really how he goes about this stuff. We break down his dream framework and how you can put it into practice in your life individually, how you can think about this with your teams. A lot of just really good stories, heart, positivity, motivation. I don't think you're going to walk away from this conversation feeling drained. I think you're going to walk away from this conversation feeling uplifted. Even if you're in the most difficult season of your life, there is something in here that will hopefully spark something inside you that you can put into practice, that can make a positive difference for yourself, that can make a positive difference around you, that can really bring a better version of you forward, because we are enough just as we are right now, and we can always be working to become a better version of ourselves. And I think that is so evident in this conversation. I would love to hear what you're taking away from this, and make sure you go to the show notes, because there's a ton of resources that Scott has around his dream framework and other events that he has available that you're going to definitely want to check out. Take a listen. Scott, I am so excited to just have your positivity and your energy that I think is just needed in general, but our world is so challenged and struggling and hurting right now. So this dose of sparkle, as I like to call it, is what I just think is needed. So just thank you for being here today.
I'm so excited to be able to have this conversation, because I agree. There's so many places you could go, and there's things that could bring your energy down. If you're here, that means you want something that's going to lift your energy back up. And that is my purpose in life. So I'm excited for this.
I love it. I love that purpose. Well, and to anchor this, for your awareness, and I think you already know this, but I think it's helpful to frame our conversation that the Show Up as a Leader, we firmly believe that leadership never has been and never will be about a title or a role. And the premise of this show is that we define leadership as maximizing our positive impact around us by becoming our best, fully authentic self, and supporting those around us to break past barriers and step into their greatness. And I know that is a mouthful, but when you think about, your positivity and in every interaction, like if this could be with a stranger, this could be with our family, this could be with our team members. Obviously, if we formally lead people, there is another level of intention that we need to have. But I think it's so easy to be in our own world and stuck in our own crap that we're not thinking about, how can I show up as a leader in this moment, in this interaction? And that's really where I think your work comes in. It's that we can apply it universally. And I think it's so easy to get stuck in our own head trash, get stuck in our own junk, that we lose sight of that opportunity to show up as a leader in our lives.
Yeah, absolutely. We forget that we have the superpower within us, and it just takes a little bit of reactivation. It's as if your car has been sitting for a while and you go to start it and it doesn't start up the same way it did, or maybe it doesn't start at all, and you need someone to come up and charge up your battery. That's what I've surrounded my life with. I'm not this way because I was born and I was just constantly positive. I needed to reinvent what my environment looked like to make sure that when I show up as my best self. And just exactly why you're here, this amazing community's here, is because you need that charge up. Something every day that's going to say, you know what? I do got this. And the right people really bring you to your best self.
It's about putting intentionality into who we spend our time with, where we let our mental, and emotional energy go, where we spend our money, the whole list. Like if we're intentional about that, I think we all logically know that we can't control anything in this world but ourselves. And at the same time, it's so easy to get caught up of what's ever going on in the news or social media or what happened to us earlier in the day or what someone did or said, that we forget we have that agency, and we forget we have a choice of how we respond. And I want to get your thoughts on this, because I love to attribute people, and I can't remember who said this, so I wish that I could attribute them. But years and years and years ago, I was working for a consulting firm, and at the annual meeting, they had brought in this speaker who had been through a lot in his life. And there's a line that he said, and I don't remember his name. This is where it's like really unfortunate, but there's a line he said that stuck with me. And he said, stuff is going to happen. Bad stuff will happen, but misery is a choice.
That's so true. You get to decide how you respond to the situations. There's exactly what you talked about. You don't know what tomorrow or the rest of the today is going to bring. But if you could take yourself out of the situation and give yourself a second to think, how do I want to show up in this moment? You could then change the outcome of your life. I think of smaller examples of even driving in traffic. A good thing you could do right away is see how you react to someone cutting you off or maybe getting a little close in your lane. Our first initial reaction is to get upset and we get angry and we look at that person as, why would they do that? But what really helps to reframe is to take a second, and I always try to give the benefit of the doubt. And some people fight back on me on this, but I always try to see that person as human as possible. I don't know what they're going through in their life. I don't know what they're charging to, but I also do know one thing. For most of us, we're doing the best that we can in that exact moment. And so if we're always looking for what's going wrong in the world, we forget that the person that might have cut you off in traffic, they might be going through their own battles, their own demons. They might be so caught off guard by how life has thrown things at their direction that we allowed it to step into ours. And so if you're able to just see people as humans that are doing the best they can in that moment, in that time, it allows us to do something that I think we need to step back into. And that's give grace. When you have a little more grace for the others around you, you don't get as upset. You forgive. And when you forgive, that allows you to step back into your inner peace, to step back into your most authentic self, and in exchange, become the leader that you knew you were destined to be.
There is so much in that I appreciate. And I love your example of traffic. It's funny because in one of the core exercises that we do all the time in our leadership workshops and even individual coaching is really looking at what kind of one of two paths that our thinking is on. And the path that our thinking tends to go on automatically, because as human beings, we are hardwired for survival, which means we go into self-protection mode, which means we go into judger mode. And that's what the path is. It's a reactive path called the judger path. And when we're on that, right, just like it sounds, we're judging, we're blaming. It's a very so that person cut into my lane, blah, 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 they don't know how to drive. We get all worked up, we get stressed, right? And then it turns into road rage sometimes, or it ruins our day or whatever it is. And I use this example when I'm teaching it, and I say, or we can take the intentional path, which means we have to pause. We have to lean into curiosity. We have to see their humanness. We have to recognize that everybody's going through something. And that path is a path of curiosity. And it's a path of, I wonder why they're driving so erratically. So I'll say okay, so you got the person that cuts you off. You get in your head about whatever story you've made up about what a horrible person they are, and they did it on purpose, and blah, 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 and now you're all pissed off and great. Or you pause and you go, God, I wonder why they're driving so crazy. God, I hope they didn't just find out a loved one's in the hospital. And in that moment, your paradigm shifts and you calm down, and it benefits you as much as the other person. So anyway, I'm like, oh yes, we use an example like that, but I think it's so true. There's that well-known story. I think it's Stephen Covey. I'm pretty sure. I think he has it back in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People that's been told to death, but it's so powerful. It's a man on the train and his kids are all acting up and they're all wild and everyone around is getting pissed off, right? Because these unruly kids and they're rolling their eyes and looking at each other and all that. And then they come up, somebody is quote unquote brave enough. I don't know that it's brave. I think it's judgy, but someone goes up to him and says, can you please do something about your children or control them, or they're, causing a scene or they're disrupting people. And he says, I know, I'm sorry. We just left the hospital. Their mother just died. Right. In that moment, you feel like a jackass. Right. And then that person and so I share all that because in the work we do, we always say that in the absence of data, our brains are going to fill in that space with story. And that story is usually full of judgment, magnifying fears, et cetera, versus curious. So Anyway, I know we're going to geek out all things, but I want to talk about before we dive in, because we've just like gone right there. You weren't always this positive, happy person. You weren't always about purpose and intentionality. These are skills that we learn to build. Talk about kind of how you got to this place, a little bit about you, why you do what you do, and then we'll dig into your framework that I think so many people can benefit from.
Yeah, it's extraordinary that you bring this up because who I am today is miles different from who I was a decade or more ago. And what I always like to say when I speak on stages now is I'm an average dude, very average dude with an extraordinary attitude. And that got crafted as I was growing up, and I felt so self-conscious of who I was. I didn't want people to look at me because I was kind of ashamed of the way my face had acne. I didn't like people to look at my body because I was ashamed of the way it looked at the time. And I didn't want to speak up too much because I didn't want to be the outcast of a group. I mean, I really remember going up to a friend group and having a circle of people literally block me out. And I remember trying to pop my head in to try to, guys, like, why is no one talking? And I realized that was the start of who I became. Because in that moment, I realized that I never wanted someone to feel like that, to be an outsider, someone that quote unquote doesn't fit in. And in that moment, I started to change who I hung around. I started hanging out with friends that I'm still friends with today that I didn't have to change for. I could step up into my most authentic self, and that led me to my evolution when I got into college. I didn't know it at the time, but I was going down a path that made everyone else happy. I went into school to go into the medical field because it sounded great. I know a lot of us do things because they sound great to other people, but when we do them, they don't feel in alignment with who we are. So as I was going after this medical degree, I wasn't doing great in class. I was falling asleep and getting in trouble, but I also decided that I wanted to get involved with the campus. And so I went and applied to work in the orientation team. So there I was leading students and speaking on stage, and something started to click. Every time I got on stage, I felt electric. I felt like this was my entire being coming to life, but I didn't know what to do with that feeling. Now, I share that because I think there are those things in our lives as well. You might be listening to this and thinking, wait, every time I sing or I paint or I work on crafts or I work with people, it just lights me up inside. I always say that is the universe calling and it's on you to answer. Because in that moment, as I was on stage speaking, I knew something was speaking to me. I didn't know what to do with it. But I did the thing that so many people are scared to do, and I get it because I was extremely scared to do this, but I made a change. As I was going for a medical degree that everyone thought was great, I said, nope, that is not me any longer. I don't know where I'm going to be, but that is not who I am. So I started looking for what that next step would be. But one of the most powerful things I talk about in my dream framework, and I'll talk about a little bit of a hint of it now, is when you get with a great environment, they will see things in you that you might not see in yourself. So as I'm on stage speaking, and my entire being is coming to life, and every bit of me wants the person who's listening to me to step into their most authentic self. I had friends around me said, that's it. You have a gift. You have to use this gift in a way that I don't know if you know how to use. They said you should check out the radio station on campus. What if you had your own radio show? I didn't even know there was a radio show. But I walked in and that moment changed my life. Because I walked through those doors and I saw exactly where I was meant to be. Using my voice for good, helping others step into their most authentic selves. And all of it roots back to that 13-year-old kid who wasn't allowed back in that friend group. I wanted to have a place that people felt safe and comfortable and made sure that you could be exactly who you are in that moment. The first time I ever got on stage, I was supposed to MC an event. I never knew how to do it. Nobody told me how to host an event, but I kept one thought in mind. The people who came out to this event, they wanted to have a good time. It is in me to make sure that they feel comfortable in doing that. If I could look as crazy as possible on stage, I could do all the dance moves, say all the ridiculous things, help people step into their selves. They could look at me and laugh along with me, but know that they're having the best time being who they truly are. And so that's what lit up that first flame. I said, wait a second. If we could step into our most authentic selves, it allows others to step into theirs.
I love that. As I'm listening to you, Scott, it reminds me of the well-known Marianne Williamson quote that is attributed because Nelson Mandela, it was part of his inauguration speech, but it's the whole, again, I don't know it by heart, but it's the whole that you shrinking, right, doesn't serve the world. And that when you let your light shine, you inadvertently give other people permission to do the same. And how often do we hear people say, oh gosh, I could never do that. And maybe those of you listening, like you have no desire to go on to stage. Like you were saying, Scott, maybe it's this or it's that, but there's so many places of our life where we don't show up. That's why we say part of the definition of leadership is becoming our best, fully authentic self, because that's not easy. And I love that you want to inspire people and motivate them. And I would say we have to take it a step further, because what we've learned from our research and the work that we've been doing is that I can have all the motivation in the world where, yes, I'm inspired and, oh, I want to do what Scott says or follow his framework. And I love that you said, like, hey, it was my 13-year-old self. We use 10 as an average, but in those first 7 to 15 years of our life, we are downloading programming from our lived experiences. And it could be that it happened to us. It also could be that we observed it happening around us, but it gives us programming that tells us how the world functions and the rules of the road, when to be quiet, when to speak up, when we're going to be accepted, when we're going to be rejected, all of those things. And then it basically, that's our inner operating system that we don't realize is working subconsciously. So you could have experience like you have, and then it's what I call and overcompensation is the wrong word in your case, but it's an overcompensation of I am never going to experience that again, or I am never going to let somebody do that again. And so now that is your operating system. For some, it could have been, you know what, that experience actually had them shrink and tells them, I don't belong, I don't fit in, I have to be somebody other than who I am because my authentic self isn't enough. And they spend their whole life overcompensating, hiding, tapping out, and the list goes on and on. So I share all that because it's a shared human experience to have those early life experiences and to have that 10-year-old version of ourself be the one that's actually showing up today, not the 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 plus year old version of ourself. And so I think it's so critical. And so I love that you were able to see that and also go, gosh, this isn't what I want to do. But it takes a lot of courage to step into the unknown, to go, I'm going to go into this radio. I don't know what this is. I've never emceed before. But what I hear that and there's so much I love, but what I hear that I think we can ground ourselves in is when you make it not about you, right? You made it about, can I create a good experience for these people? And so often, because I do a lot of speaking and keynotes, you can tell when someone's on stage and they're there to perform and it's about them versus they care about you, that you feel something, that you feel like it wasn't about watching a performance. So there's a person who I'm up there, it's all about me. Yeah, look at me versus this is about you, and I am that catalyst for you to feel or experience something. And that's what you're doing that is so powerful. It's bigger than you. So just thank you for all of that. I just think that's amazing.
Thank you for saying that. I was just speaking to a friend who was nervous to get on stage for the first time, and I reminded them, this is not about you or I. You're up there because you've received help that you now get to pass on to someone else. And what a gift that is. And when you can keep that perspective, the nerves go away. It becomes exciting. You now get to pass on to something that changed your life for someone else. That always motivates me to keep going.
Well, yeah. And if you think about most people in this example are not sitting there judging you, they're rooting for you. Like they're probably like, hey, right? Like they might even have this narrative of, I wish that I could be that brave to get up there, or they're rooting for you because they're hoping that you're going to impart some knowledge or some wisdom or whatever it might be. So you have this work and you alluded to the dream framework. And I think so often that we are afraid to dream, or we don't let ourselves dream, or we've lost sight of that. And so talk to me about your dream framework and what it is. Walk us through it. Give us examples of how we can apply this in our lives to show up as leaders.
Well, here's the thing. We get one shot at this thing we called life as far as we know. And so when I was going through my journey of finding what I wanted to do, I realized that there are things that light us up. There are things that drain us from energy. There are things that people want to see you do, and there's things that people don't want to see you do. The whole reason I came up with the dream framework is because everything I've ever gone for that has been extraordinary from my framework, the world has not agreed with. So I'm not going to share this expecting you to think that everyone's going to be so proud of you for everything that you're about to go accomplish and everything that you're about to go do. But what I am saying is that the things that come to you, I believe are meant for you. And I knew this the moment I stepped into radio. When I had my first little show on the University of South Florida's campus, and I told everyone I was going to be a radio host. I want to be the biggest radio host. It was just something in me came to life when I did it. Just like I know there's something in you. When you do it, nothing else feels better than that moment. But when I shared that message and that vision with other people, the world didn't want to hear it. I had friends and family telling me that I was insane for this idea. How are you going to make money being a radio host? You're going to be the best? How are you even going to get into that industry? The thing I'm not going to share with you in this is how to do any of it. Because if you think of how, we could come up with a million different things on how to do it. How do you lose weight? Well, you could have a diet, you could work out, you could do your steps, the list goes on and on. But what I discovered is first we have to come up with the things that we want to bring to life. And let's use 2026 as the example. If I'm heading to the new year and I want to see everything that I want to do, I heard a powerful quote from Albert Einstein. Our imagination is a preview of life's coming attractions. So if I just accept that the things that come to my mind are just a preview of what my life could be, well, then I don't see it as all that's scary. I now get to find the path that I get to go down. So if I look at the dream framework, it always goes down to D. D is you have to decide, what are the things that are meant for me? Now, this all started because I was so confused in where I wanted to go in life. I was watching a Steve Harvey video, and he was like, you know what? Go ahead and write down 300 things that you want to do in life. 300 things that you want to accomplish, you want to have, you want to achieve. And it sounded absolutely insane. Because he even said it. He said, you're going to start writing and you're going to run out of steam. You won't be able to come up with anything. And what that is, that's a limiting belief on how far you think you could go in this life. And I thought, dang, that's a really good point. Because I started writing, I got to 50. I was like, that's it? That's all I got? So I was like, no, Scott, you have to push farther. You have to uncover the things that are really coming out. And so if you give yourself enough time to just sit and think, what are the things that I would want out of this year? What are the things that I want with my family, the vacations I want to go on, maybe the relationship I want to have with my partner or a future partner? What are the things and qualities that we have together? What are the things that I want to do with the work that I create? When you just start writing all of these things down, I say it's the first step because you have to be able to see it to believe it to achieve it. But if we keep it up in our mind, that's what we call overwhelm. That's too many options. Oh gosh, your mind's bouncing all over the place. I got to feed the cat, but I also got to get my steps in. I want to grow my business, but I'm stuck in my career. I got to fix my relationship, but you know what? The kids got to go to soccer. Now, that's a lot for your mind to handle. But what I knew in that moment is, okay, first step, I got to write it out. I got to write out everything that's possibly coming to me. Now, this is where a lot of people get it wrong. This is where I got wrong for like nearly a decade of this work, of writing out everything and just being like, all right, that's it. That's just as overwhelming because now I got a list of 300 things that I want out of life. And now I'm looking at this entire list thinking, there's no way. But when we narrow it down to even the top 10, but I would go further and say the top 3 of what you want to bring to life, we get clarity. What are the 3 areas of life I need to truly work on? D is decide. I need to decide 3 things that would truly make the most difference in my life in this year. I knew this from the moment I drew the picture of me being a radio host. I needed to see it. I had a mentor tell me, draw year 1, year 3, year 5, and year 10. It sounded wild. I'm going to draw my dreams, but I drew out year 1, I was going to be a producer. And then he said, push harder, push farther. Where could you be in 3 years? I said, well, I'm going to be a radio host for one of the biggest stations in Florida. And then in 5 years, I was going to be the best radio host. And then in 10 years, I'll be the best radio host in America. I kid you not. Year 1, I was the producer. I learned as much as I possibly could from the amazing mentors I worked with. Now, in my field of work, I'm so big on the dream because there is nobody that would have said, Scott, in 3 years, you're going to be a host in one of the biggest markets in the country. But literally to the month, the show left the market and the host seat was available. It was on me to then step up. The way I drew it is the way it became. I've now been in this industry for 8 years. I have not only become the radio host that I have dreamed of, I have become the best radio host multiple times in the area. Something that it would have been absolutely ridiculous for someone to tell me that was possible. But the first time I saw that, I thought, wait a second, this is not just a coincidence. There's something there. It's because if I'm willing to believe in it and see it every day, then that aligns my body with where direction I need to go. And so as I drew out all my different dreams and I narrowed it down to the top few, I knew I wanted to be the best radio host. I wanted to do things for my community. I wanted to make sure that I was stepping up in a way that served. It wasn't just about me, but it served. I knew my purpose every day and where I was going. When you're able to see what you're going after, a lot of that extra noise quiets down. So the first thing is to decide what is truly important. There's a lot of things we could do, but what is truly important for where you want to go?
There's such richness in that. And I think there's several things that are coming up for me. One, that we do have cognitive overload. And, you look at all the data about our attention span and things that are competing for our attention and all the information coming at us. And so when we're thinking about our own life, when we're thinking about development for ourselves and people, speaking to those that are listening within organizations, we have to recognize that cognitive overload is a very real thing. And so there's something to be said, like you say, focus on 3. In the specific coaching methodology that we use, we help people narrow it down to 1 because I can focus on one thing at a time. So we are recording this at the start of a new year. I've never been a fan of New Year's resolutions, but I have been one of those people that I do pick a word of the year that guides. And it's because it's that one thing. But when you have clarity on that one thing, all these other things have to get into place. And there's a great book that God has been out for decades now, I feel like, called The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. But he talks about this whole idea of transforming organizations and transforming things because the way our minds work, if we get focused on one thing. So he tells the story of Paul O'Neill, who was the CEO of Alcoa Aluminum Corporation of America. And he talks about how he's coming into this heated environment. You got unions, you got all this stuff. And he was like, what is the one thing that I could even get the unions behind because they don't agree on anything? And he painted this vision of, we are not just going to improve our safety, but we're going to be the safest company in America. Now, with what they do in their industry, they make everything from the tinfoil and Hershey's Kisses to satellites and stuff. And it's a very dangerous industry. But he said, if I can get everybody focused on what does it take? So you go back to the hows. No, we got to get focused on the vision is, let's be the safest company in America. And then what happened is, in order for that to happen, their leadership practices had to change, their communication practices had to change, how they did reporting, like every single thing operationally within that organization had to change across the board to meet that vision. Or, these organizations that we work with, and, they use the whole quadrant of urgent and important, and they've got 100 things that are in the urgent and important, or 100 priorities for the year. And I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? And a lot of those priorities could actually be like the hows or the strategies or the to-dos. And it's like, but what are they in support of? So we do a lot of work of what is like your rally cry for, and it may not be for the whole year. It might be for a quarter. It might be for a month. It might be for a 3-week period. But can we focus ourselves and our teams on one thing and get laser focused on whatever that is, and then pick something else? So I just think there's a lot of richness in that, because we do get in overload and then we don't do anything because we don't know where to focus, or we don't have the discipline to stay focused. So then it's like squirrel, and we forget, nope, this is what my focus is, my purpose. So I just think there's such richness in that, for one, let's move beyond those self-limiting beliefs, but then let's look at whether it's 1 or 3 or whatever it is, but a finite small number that our brain can actually hold on to. And when we focus on that, when we focus our teams on that, when we focus our organizations on that, when we focus ourselves on that, it makes things clear and less overwhelming. So I love that.
Yeah, it's like, and I always talk to people about how we use a map to get to a destination if we're in our car, but a lot of us don't ever design the map of where we want to go in our life. So if I'm willing to pull up a map to get to the Chili's in my town, but I'm not willing to create the map of where I want to go for my dream life, then who am I to say that I can't get it? Because I've never actually sat there to decide how to design it.
I love that you I started out in medicine and I didn't like that. You'll appreciate this. Back a little while ago, when I was in undergrad, I originally was a psychology major. And I didn't dislike it, but it didn't light me up. I was just very neutral about it, right? And it was funny because then when my freshman year of college, I became a group fitness instructor, and I thought, oh, okay. And I live in Minneapolis. I was in Chicago for a convention where you had to get continuing education credits. And I remember watching the people on stage and being just like a sponge and wanting to go to every session and learn all this stuff. And I didn't really know what that was, but I was like, this is really cool. And I was driving back from Chicago somewhere in the middle of Wisconsin, which apparently all good epiphanies happen, right? But are you listening? And all of a sudden this thought popped in my head of, I'm going to do that someday. And I didn't know what that was, but I was like, I'm going to do that. And I was like, it's not going to be psychology. I don't really know. And so then I sat with that question for about a year. I studied abroad. I came back and I was like, I'm not going back to the same school. I'm not going to do psychology. And so I started looking at, well, what are careers? I didn't want to be in a health club full time. I'm like, there's got to be something. And I learned that there's this world of, like, at that time, worksite wellness was early on. So, but there wasn't a degree in it. So I was like, well, you have to get a degree in like exercise physiology or kinesiology. I knew nothing about it, but I was like, okay. So I changed my major, changed schools. I was going to be a senior. And I remember my parents saying, you're going to go into kinesa, what? Right. And so I was like, yeah, well, whatever. And so, but then here's what's funny is I get in there and I start taking the classes. And I thought that I was either going to become a sports medicine physician or I was going to become a physical therapist because that just sounded cool to me. Right. And I had my first cadaver lab and I had my first biochem class. And to this day, I still do not eat turkey or chicken with the skin on. I'm just telling you, people. So every physician that I coach laughs their butt off when I tell them, I'm like, nope, cadaver lab ruined it for me. And I was like, I need to rethink this because the idea of it and the reality are not so much. But then I was like, what else could I do with this so that I didn't completely throw my life away? So anyway, I share that to go, are we listening? Because I could have just gone the route of stayed in the safe and finished my degree and gotten it in psychology. I could have, pushed for maybe, I don't know, I probably would have failed because I suck at science. But I think recognizing, hey, we can shift gears and get really focused on what does light us up. But what's funny is when I think about the path that I took, if you would tell me that what I'm doing today, like nothing trained me for it from a degree standpoint, but it's when the doors open, someone did this, they give you an opportunity, they believe in you, they see something in you. I think so often we might have a leader or a colleague that's like, hey, gives us a project or wants to include us in a meeting or wants to give us this opportunity or ask us to be on a committee or get involved in an organization. And we have this thought in our head of, I don't know what the hell I'm doing, or they're going to realize they made a mistake or whatever it is. And so we let those beliefs get in our way rather than thinking, well, what if? What if I did try that? And is that aligned with my purpose and values? If it's not, right? But is it aligned with something that feels very authentic to me? If it is, then why am I holding myself back? If it doesn't feel authentic to me, it's easier to say no, so to speak.
Absolutely. And it's a great way to look at what are the things that are draining from life. I look at life as such a beautiful gift, and there are different moments that are highs and lows and everything in between. But so many of us, me included at many moments, have gone through things that have just been draining, and we've chosen to not do anything about it. I don't know the environment that you might be in or the situation that you might be in, but I would empower you to evaluate it. If you find yourself just feeling drained every day, my belief, and it doesn't have to be yours, but it's one that's definitely helped me, is that's not a great way to go through life. What are the things that we could change about it? And obviously you're doing the work because here you are with us right now.
Yeah. Part of me sharing like that whole background is that one of the things I learned in doing the work of exercise physiology, and I taught group fitness for a long, long time, and I had a personal training certification, is we always talked about that your physical energy follows your mental energy. And I have a son who's 15, and as he was in Taekwondo at one point in time and working on his black belt, and he's a competitive swimmer. And he talks about how he hates meets because he gets all in his head, right? Head trash. And I talked about, do you ever watch like Olympic swimmers and they have a routine, or any of these athletes have a routine pre-match, pre-event, because they're getting in the right mental space. And I'm like, you can have the physical training in the world, but if your head trash is telling you this is going to be scary or you're beating yourself up, you are going to perform that way. So I just think that there's such power to that of doing the inner work and the mindset work, because it's easier. We want to get into action. We want to do stuff because it's visible, it's tangible. And that inner mindset work is messy, it's vulnerable, and it's not necessarily tangible, but it's the foundation of everything. So I love that that's your first, decide. There's a lot that goes into that, but it makes so much more sense. You got to do the work to get clear. You got to go beyond the beliefs. You've got to narrow it down. You've got to focus. So that's everything involved with decide. So that's the D of the dream series. We got to get to the other one. So talk about the R.
Now let's go into R, because R was the one that took me the longest to figure out, but once it hits, It's the thing that will change your life forever. R is your reasons. We dabbled on it for just a second, but your reasons will be the driving force behind anything. And I remember the first time I heard this, it didn't make sense to me. I need a good, compelling why to support my dream. It didn't make sense until the hardest moment of my life. I was going after the radio career. I was succeeding. I was winning awards. And what I realized is that I was making it all about me. It felt good to be the name that people talked about. It felt good to accept awards that had my name on it. But what I forgot were all the people that got me to that moment. See, my mom was the only supporter in my entire journey. While everyone else thought I would fail, my mom told me, go after the dream because I don't want you to follow in the footsteps that I have. My mom was an amazing soul. She was someone that always did anything she could to support her family. I would not be here today without her courage and her strength. But I also watched my mom go to a job that didn't light her up. I watched her take on the stress of the world, trying to do everything for everyone else and never putting enough time into herself. But when I shared my dream with her, she told me, go after it. She empowered me that no matter how many other people thought it was crazy, this was given to you. Do not stop when someone else tells you you can't do it, because I know you can. And so as I started to rise in success, I got a phone call from my dad that I needed to rush home. My mom was in the ICU. I remember driving home and I was so just thrown off on how I thought I was doing everything right. And then the one person that supported everything that I've ever done, that pushed me to believe in myself, I was going to be saying my goodbye to. My mom passed away on my 24th birthday. And it was one of the hardest moments of my life. There's the cheerleader that's always been there, an open ear, an open heart. And in that moment, I wanted to just give up. I wanted to give up on the dream because I thought, what's the point? And I'm sure so many of you have been there too, where you're going about the journey and life just keeps knocking you down and setting you back. And you think, okay, are you trying to tell me that this is not meant for me? Because it's really feeling like that. In that moment, that's exactly what it felt like. I was going to go in. I was going to give up on the radio career. I thought, you know what? No, this is not meant for me, because the person that always listened, no matter what she was going for, the person that was always there to hear me out on a dream is no longer there. Why am I going to do it? And I remember sharing that story on the air as I was getting ready to say my goodbye. And then I started seeing all these different messages from people. The ones that were so appreciative that I was open about what was happening in my life because it helped them through a moment of time that they were going through. I went home as I was still battling the grief, and you know that moment where it's so painful, it almost feels like it just paralyzes your body. My heart was just in such agony that the only thing I could think to do is if I could just go out and run for a little bit, maybe I could put enough pain in my legs, it'll take away from my heart. And as I went on that run, I remember it was the first time I finally gave my head space to think. And I was running and I was crying and I was listening to different messages, trying to put my life together. But then a message happened. I started thinking about all the families coming up on the holiday season that might not have been able to get together for the holidays because they might not have the finances for the food, or somebody has to work. And it made me think about how my family is never going to be the same during the holidays, and how painful that thought was. Every single holiday, I will go forever now and look across the room and see an empty chair. That was one of the hardest things to envision. Every time I think about it, it just gets me. But in that moment, I thought, what if I could take that pain away from another family? What if I could do something that could make enough money to give them the resources so the whole family gets together, something that I've had the gift of being given for the past 24 years? What if I did something that sounded impossible to make sure that we drive home this message? I always talked on the air about going after the impossible because it's meant for you. The radio dream was the first impossible that I made possible. And then all of a sudden my call said, do a marathon and raise money with the platform that you've been given. You have the privilege of speaking to thousands of people every day. Share your story. Do something that's crazy for you that will make a difference for others. And I went home so excited. I said, Dad, I'm going to do a marathon and we're going to raise money to feed families for the holidays. I'm going to carry on Mom's legacy. It became my reason, my heartbeat, my why. 2 months later, I went off to do my first marathon. And it was COVID time, so it was like my dad on a bike and we're just off on a trail. And I remember 4 hours and 30 minutes later, barely able to even walk, my legs just wobbling like a baby giraffe. And I looked down and I saw we raised nearly $10,000 to feed families. I sat there and I cried and I looked up and I just thanked my mom for the strength to push forward. And in that moment, I realized what it truly meant to have a compelling why. See, we don't do these things because we want a nice paycheck. Money is just an object. But if you're able to say, I need to go to this job and make money to make sure that I'm putting food on my table because I want the family that I have to have things that I didn't have growing up, well, now you have a different meaning. Everyone talks about fitness goals in the beginning of the year. Well, if you contribute your fitness goal and all you think is you want a six-pack, you're probably going to give up. Because what you're going to realize is that six-pack is not the happiness. But when you think about, wait a second, I want to work my body to make sure that when I'm older, I'm able to not only be there for my kids, but for my grandkids. I have a longevity that lives within me. All of these different reasons are the reminder of why you stay on the path. And as I had that reminder, I jumped right back into radio. I realized that my voice was not about me winning awards. It was about lifting communities. The entire reason I get up in my show every day and I'm enlightened, people are like, how you wake up at 4 and you're so energetic? It's because every day I know I have an opportunity to make someone else's day brighter. I remember what it was like to sit in the car feeling so lonely, but you had a radio show there that made you feel like one of your best friends. So no matter what work you're in, when you tie it to the reason that truly moves you, nothing could stop you. But you have to be the one that comes up with a deep enough reason for why you're going to push when life pushes back. Because we all know life will. There will be things that come up later in this year that you're going to look at and think, how in the world am I going to get through this? But when you know why you're doing something and you remind yourself of it every day and it lights up your body. See, my why is so in line with what I do now when I speak. I can't let someone go through a life where they're not feeling charged and energized and loving the moments that they have. It's because I watched what it was like not to have it. So I will do anything in my power to make sure that we could bring your life to its fullest. And that why is within you as well.
I love that. I mean, Simon Sinek, start with why. And we do a ton of that work. We actually have a discovery tool that we use from the Why Institute to help people find that. And there is something when you think about the decide and reasons, the first part of the dream framework, it reminds me of, we call it our lighthouse. So if you think about what a lighthouse does, it cuts through the fog. It tells ships where to go when waters get dark and stormy, when you have those things that you don't know how you're going to get through. And really that beacon of light coming out of the lighthouse is really that purpose. So it's those reasons, it's the why, it's our just cause, if you will, to use Simon Sinek's more updated language that he has. And then the base of that lighthouse is our core values. Like, we have to have something to anchor us. And when we think about like courageous leadership, we do a lot of work with courageous leadership. I'm one of Brene Brown's certified Dare to Lead facilitators. And when we do that work, we always say, when we're asking people to lean into uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure, when we're asking you to be courageous in your life, you don't just blindly do it. You have to have something to ground you and anchor you. And one of the things that we anchor ourselves in is ground ourselves in those core values, or I call it the lighthouse. We've got to know our purpose and values. And so many of us have 5 or 6 values. Like, oh, I think I have some. Like, no. It's 1 or 2. Like, what is it that grounds you? It goes back to just everything you're talking about. It's that grounding force of life is hard. Like 2025, like I told everybody, you're probably not old enough to remember this, but in the 1990s, there was like this OxyClean infomercials bearded guy. And it was like, but wait, there's more. But wait, there's more. And if there was a meme that was like my 2025, it was that, but not in a good way. It was like, you can't even make this crap up, right? But it was how do I anchor myself and get through? It's that lighthouse. Like, okay, here's how I'm going to show up for my family. Here's how I'm going to show up for this person. Here's how I'm going to show up for myself and give myself some grace during this time and how I'm going to move through. So I love everything about that. Okay, so we've got the D and the R, decide and reasons. What's the E?
E is the environment. This is the one that charges me up because I have tried, and I'm sure you have as well, to do everything on our own. I've got it covered. I could do this. I could figure this out. You do that enough times, you're just going to exhaust yourself. You're going to be out there trying to learn everything, do everything, find the path. But when we realize we could create an environment where we thrive, this is the game changer. When you decide, wait a second, I don't need to do this alone, I always say there's a couple different key players that you could bring into your life. the key communities that you could join that not only see your vision, but support your vision. I learned that the first time I stepped into college, and I had fellow orientation leaders that saw the vision for me that I didn't see. They lifted me to go after the dream of being the radio host that I am today. They saw something in me that at the time I wouldn't accept for myself. You need those people. You need people that are going to push you. But also, one of the biggest things is find somebody that has done who and what you have done. I've gone after marathons, and I took that to raise more money by doing Ironmans, and all these different things scare the world out of me. But the first time I decided I wanted to do an Ironman, I never did a triathlon before. I just thought that would be really cool, and I could use that as another platform to raise more money to help more families. I knew my why, I knew what I wanted to do, but the missing piece was how the heck am I going to do it? I don't have a game plan for this, so instead of trying to figure it out, I got myself the best coach. Not any coach, the best coach. The one that I actually heard the story that they were doing the Ironman, that I was so enlightened by. I was going to, you know what? I'm going to reach out. I'm going to find a way to get into their world so they could teach me. Find the people who have done what you have done. Get yourself with the people who are doing what you want to do, and create the environment that you feel your absolute best self. There's a reason as we get older, it seems like our friend group starts to slowly shrink till you get a handful, and make sure that handful of people allows you to thrive. But you also have to see the areas in your life where maybe it's more of a struggle. And I'll go back to our health analogy. It's always one of the biggest goals. I want to get healthier. I want to feel better, look better. But you don't like going to the gym. Okay. Well, if I don't like going to the gym, well, then maybe I'm going to put myself in an environment that I'm getting more than just the gym. Because maybe the classes could be more of a social environment that's feeding that side of me that I love. And at the same time, they're lifting me to want to continue working out. They're holding me accountable. I have to actually sign the thing. And so find the places that support your dreams. In radio, I found the mentors. In Ironmans, I found the coach. With my community here, I have different communities. I could share my dreams and they're not looked down upon. It just becomes part of the normal conversation because everyone else is doing their own. Even conversations like this, it lights me up because I'm like, oh, great. This community gets it. Be a part of that as much as possible because they're going to be the ones that say, you're not stopping right now. No. Let's sit down. Let's work it out. You're going to keep moving forward. E is your environment, and make it one that helps you thrive.
That is so important because we are a social species. We're not meant to go this alone. And I think one of the faulty programs that we've uncovered in our research that can hijack me is what we call the martyr, but it's we're going to do everything ourselves, either because we don't want to be a burden or because we feel like we have to be self-sufficient or we can't rely on people or blah, blah, whatever the freaking head trash is that takes over. But, so many people will go, I'm just going to go to YouTube. Well, YouTube can't teach you everything. Like there is something to be said of that we actually want to mentor and learn from another human and some of those insights and things and that relationship that we build that is so, so important. And as you're saying, there's a quote that comes up for me. Last spring, I was in Las Vegas for the Female Voice Awards, and I was very fortunate that you talk about the awards. It was accepting Business Coach of the Year award, which is very cool, right? Awards are nice, but here's the thing. You go back to, it's not about me. It's about the people that have entrusted me to be on their leadership journey with them and watching them get out of their way. And when they graduate from coaching, it's like the biggest warm fuzzy. And I'm like, and I always say to them, you did the work. I created, but you did the work. You leaned in. Like there are some people who won't do the work, right? But I share all that because there was a woman who's freaking phenomenal. Her name is Chantel Love, and she's all about personal branding. And I wrote down a quote from her. She said, surround yourself with people who see your success as inspiration, not intimidation.
Ooh,
right?
That's good. I like that.
Yeah. And how often, especially in a room full of women, there's so often where it can be this catty, mean girl stuff versus like, I am excited for you and I want to lift you up. And there is something to be said, like, I think our friend group evolves. I mean, I think in my life, there's people who are just there and want the best for you. And, they don't care what your house looks like. And they're going to speak truth to you even when it's hard. They're going to show up when times are hard. And then you got the people that are maybe convenient for a moment, but then you start to realize like, they're kind of toxic, or when I'm around them, I turn into a version of me that I don't like or feels out of alignment. Then there's a boundary I need to set, or maybe a relationship I need to change because that environment is not serving who I want to be in this world. And it doesn't mean that they're a bad person. It means it's not a fit anymore. And so I think that environment, and that can go for a job too, where we realize, you know what, this is just not a fit for me. And I need to figure out how to make it work until I get another one to replace my income. But recognizing that if I stay here, going back to that misery is a choice, right? Like tough stuff will happen, but misery is a choice. We can start the trajectory to set our stage for something else. It doesn't mean it's going to happen overnight, but we can start that movement. So I love that. So we have decide, reasons, environment. What's the A?
A is all about action. You could have dreams, you could have wants, you could have wishes, but how many of us have set out goals that we've never done anything for? I've done that for so long that I had to realize, wait a second, action is a scary word. But I remember after deciding to go after my dream life, I started surrounding myself with key players. Mel Robbins, Tony Robbins, Les Brown. I got a mentor in speaking, Dr. Del Toro. All of these key players, they talk about one key thing, and that is always take action. No matter where it's scary, where it's uncertain, you have to find a place where you could take action. Now, this is where things could get confusing. And this is where I love to help people work through the how. Because what I have you do is I have you just go ahead and brainstorm all the different ways of how you could turn that one idea into reality. Just go ahead and take away all the judgment from your mind and write it all out. I would say for you, it's like, okay, if you're having a tough time there, you're thinking, well, I can't come with ideas. And I asked you, well, I have to come up with $30,000 because I have to buy a new car. You would say, well, okay, I mean, you could get a loan. You could sell things in your house. Some people have even said to me as I'm on stage, you could sell your kidney. Like there's so many ways how, but we have to get out of the way that we've always looked at life. What I want people to do is just go ahead and throw out all the different action points. So this way we could show our minds, wait a second, there is a way. Okay, that's an option. That's an option. That's an option. And then what I have people do is I have them pick one right in that moment. And I have you decide to do it right now. Not tomorrow. Not next week when it feels ready. Not next month when all the other things in your life are put together. Right now. Because the whole reason for action is to get the momentum going. It's the startup of the car. It's the going of the train. It takes so much for a rocket to take off. It's that initial inertia to get you going. So a lot of people think, well, I want to change my job, but I don't know what to do with this job that I have right now. And oh my goodness, a resume is so exhausting. I'd say, okay, what's the one step that we could do right now in this moment? Let's say, well, maybe I need to get a business coach. Okay. Message him right now. Maybe I need to do my resume. Okay. Do it right now. Not when it feels right, because there's always going to be things that take priority. But I learned this at the scariest moments. When I signed up for an Ironman, it was honestly the wildest thing I've ever done. Because I'm sitting there thinking I want to do this insane adventure. I tell my family about it, and I share this because this is what's going to happen if you share your dreams with so many people. Everyone in my life thought I was going to die. I remember looking over at family members, and they were literally tearing up. They're like, you're going to die. And I thought, no, what the heck?
Thanks for your vote of confidence. Hugs and kisses.
Thanks, y'all. But I knew, you know what? They had a valid point. But I knew if I let their beliefs and my previous beliefs get in the way, then I would never do anything about it. So I did the first thing that would push me forward. I signed up for the race without having any plan. And it was just painful enough of being on $1,000 race that I was like, well, now there's no going back. I had to take immediate action because now everything else falls into place. So if it's, I want to get healthier, but I don't want to go to the gym, well, then you're going to either get a personal trainer, find a way, or you're going to sign up for the current classes, or you're going to get a friend that you're going to tell, hey, I'm going to message you in this moment, and I need you to be there for me every step of the way. I need you to hold me accountable. We're going to do this together. But the first step is getting it. For me, you have to find what are the painful moments. For me, I can't say something publicly and not go through with it. So whenever I sign up for a challenge, I'll get on my Instagram and I'll say, here is the latest challenge. Because I know in that moment, now I'm committed. That's my action step. Now I'll figure out everything else, but I need to get that rocket launched. Just like you might need to sign up for the course. You might need to send in your resume. You might need to tell your boss that you need change. But you have to take that first step immediately. Not next week, not next year. Life is too short to be waiting. Let's not wait too long.
100%. In the Dare to Lead curriculum, one of the first exercises we have people do is called Call to Courage. And it's identifying where you want to be braver in your life. And then here's the key for what you're saying is it's one thing for you to process yourself and write it on paper, write it in a workbook, but then we put them in small groups and you share it out loud, because when you get it out of your own head and you now speak it into existence, one, we all want to be braver in our life in some area. And sometimes you find people have a similar call to courage, but two, when you speak it out loud and put it out into the universe, it's like, now it's out there. So what, anyway, so there's something 100% to that. And I love that it's a small step. Like what's right? One small step. Like I think about people in sales, so often they get all caught up and it's like, what's the one action? They talk about all about the actions lead to it. And I know even for us, for business development, there's stuff where I'm like, oh, I'm not doing this regularly, or I'm not doing this because I have all this head trash around it, versus just get into action and it's amazing what happens. So love it, love it, love it, love it. Okay, last one. So we've got decide, reasons, environment, action. What is the M?
Measure. We have to be able to measure what we are doing in order to see how much progress we have made. If we wait till the finish line to celebrate our success, you're going to have a long journey of misery. But if I'm able to break down how close could I measure something to see where I'm going, then I'm able to make changes quicker. I'm able to celebrate faster. And in that process, I'm able to learn a whole lot more of where I need to make adjustments in my life. I use the analogy with losing weight. If we wait till December of a new year to see if our New Year's resolution of losing weight's paying off, whew, you might be pretty disappointed at the end of a year. And I say that because I've been there. But I also realized, wait a second, if I, and this sounds crazy to some, measure myself every day, well, at least this way I know as soon as something makes an effect and I'm able to make a change. It's the same way in business. I have my own speaking business now that I have to be able to see the results on a weekly basis. Are the posts that I'm putting up, are they making the connection that I need them to? Or the things that I'm coming up with on stage, are they having a connection and a call to action for people to actually bring to life? If I wait from a speech I do in January to see the results in December, all of that time could have been growth time. So you have to look at what that action step is and how often I can measure it. Sometimes we look at quarterly goals, but I would like to go a step further and make it weekly goals. Reevaluate. And if you want to take it a real step further, look at your goals every single day. Because again, this is your map. You have to reignite that flame all day, every day, to make sure that your nervous system feels ready for it, so your mind understands that it's coming. But if you wait to look at these goals, a couple months down the line, life gets busy, well, it's going to end up being on the back burner. So you have to find a way that you're going to be able to measure how much progress you're making, honestly, on a weekly basis, let's call it, just to check in. And this way you can give yourself that opportunity to make the changes where they're needed.
I love that. And to bring it to the workplace standpoint for a second for everyone listening, Pat Lencioni with the Table Group talks about the 3 causes of job misery and how do we remedy them. And one of them is a measurement, that if, on a day in, day out basis, how do I know that I am on the right track? And sometimes you don't get some of those tangible measurements, whether it's sales or whether it is customer satisfaction, until a longer time period. But on a day in, day out basis, do you have a co-agreement with your leader of how do I know I did a good job when I'm like, yeah, like that was a good day because whatever it might be, some qualitative, or because I stayed focused on this, or I tended to the right things. And I know on our team, we always have our quarterly offsite and we have our priorities. And then we do a Monday huddle to sync up on, okay, what's the priorities for this week? So we know, and then we look at, where are we? Where do we need to adjust? Our Friday check-in, we look at, where do we screw up and what do we learn from it and where are we at? And I will tell you, as a business owner, when I have not put the emphasis on that, or I've strayed from the agenda, then we get off track. I'm like, crap, I got to get us back. So there is something to be said about having some kind of deliberate practice around measurement that could be qualitative or quantitative, where you're regularly coming back to it, because there's that saying of, not everything that counts can be measured, which is true, and not everything that measures counts. But if we think about how do we find that happy medium of we are paying attention in some way, shape, or form, qualitatively or quantitatively, measuring things so that we know if we're on track or off track for ourselves, for our teams, makes a huge, huge difference. So love that. Love your dream framework. Okay. So you are positive. You've learned all about this stuff. But here's the thing, as I've alluded to, what I've learned. So people are listening. You're a successful radio host. You motivate all kinds of people. You've got this wonderful dream series. You've got all these different events, which people are going to have to go to the show page. You go to your website and check out, because you've got all this great stuff for people. But you're still a human being. So I would love it, Scott, if you would share, despite all of your positivity and success, what is a self-limiting story that you still tell yourself sometimes? And when it shows up, how do you move beyond it so that you can still show up as a leader in your life and have the impact you want to have?
This is so important to talk about. These are the things that I wished people that have gained so much more success would talk about more, because this is where we need to dive in and have an understanding as a human. I continuously, to this day, despite going after and accomplishing dreams and things that at one point seemed impossible, there's always this story in my head that I'm still not enough. That has gone into how attractive I am in the dating world. That has gone into how good my radio show is, and maybe it's not going to be good enough and as good as the radio host that's ahead of me. It's talked about how good I am with my fitness and my health, and really, that's the standard you hold for yourself? It's this voice that has been there since I was a kid. Now, I know a lot of us have that voice because we have a fear of being rejected, unlovable. I have that same fear too. It's every place I go. Every morning I get on the mic and I say something, there's that little voice that tries to tell me that what I said was not good enough, that it didn't make a deep enough impact. You also have the same evidence of things that you have done in the past that have gotten you to where you are today. So despite all these made-up stories of what your mind tries to tell you is not possible, or what you should be scared to try, or what might be a little too risky for you, or you might not be lovable or enough in this moment, I want you to then in that moment go back to your jar of evidence of why you are. I have literal pieces of paper of messages from people who have told me something that I have said has had an impact on their lives. So when I'm on stage and I'm thinking, wait a second, is this story even connecting with people? I have the evidence. Not a made-up story, I have the evidence that it has. And so I must continue to push forward because I don't know how many other people need the same story. When I think about the things that I want to go after, bigger dreams, bigger accomplishments, and my voice tries to tell me, You think you could do all of that? Who do you think you are? I go back to that same jar and I pull up the other evidence. I say, well, there's a point that a marathon felt impossible and I was able to do that. There was a point in my life where just leaving my room felt impossible when I was engulfed in grief. And I did that too. There are moments in your life that at one point felt impossible. There are things that you have gone through that if you shared with the rest of the world, they would look at you as the hero that you are. And it's time that you start giving yourself that same credit. Instead of being the constant critic in your life, start stepping up and being the biggest cheerleader in your life. You have done far harder things to talk yourself out of the game that you're now getting yourself into. Let those be the evidence pieces that you need to continue to push you forward. Yeah, it's supposed to be hard. That's what life is. It's supposed to be fun and adventurous and hard and challenging because we want to push to see how far we could truly go. But that's not a sign of where you should stop. That is a sign to see how far you have come and how far you have still yet to see. Use that evidence as your guiding light that nothing can or will stop you.
I love that. In the framework in my latest book that's coming out from the research we've done, we talk about a 3-step framework of name it, which is naming when the faulty program, the head trash, the not enough is showing up. Like, because when you name it, it suddenly doesn't have power. Like, oh, that's my childhood, counterfeit or martyr or whatever it is. So there's something about naming it, but it suddenly doesn't have power. Owning it, of owning where it came from. Like, wait, that's my 10-year-old or my 8-year-old or my 13-year-old self, not my adult self, but also owning how it's showing up in present day, limiting you, getting in your way. But then you talk about that evidence, that's the challenge it. And it's intentionally finding counter evidence that pokes holes in the validity of that story. Because we will always look for confirming evidence, but we need to look at, when that faulty programming, when that limited belief, when that operating system is not where it needs to be, we poke holes in it. So I love that. You have this practice of, hey, there's that not enough, there's that head trash. I'm naming it, I'm owning it. And what you're doing is that challenge piece of I am pulling this evidence when I can't find it within myself to go, here it is in black and white. Why am I going to believe this narrative when I have counter evidence here that tells me otherwise? And go to the evidence. So love it, love it, love it, love it, love it, love it. All right. Are you ready for quick questions?
Bring it.
Okay. Fill in the blank. Living authentically is.
Stepping into who you've always were supposed to be.
Yeah. Love it. When the world is presenting an opening, but you don't feel like showing up as a leader, what do?
Step forward anyway. Go first. If no one else is doing it, be the one to show them how to do it.
What is something people would be surprised to know about you?
I'm constantly battling those negative thoughts in my mind of who I am and where I belong. No matter what stage I'm on or what show I'm presenting in, no matter how positive I show up and happy, there's still that voice.
Thank you for sharing that. Love that. I mean, you're human. So there you go. Welcome to being human. Congratulate yourself on being human, as I always say to my clients. All right. What is your favorite go-to movie?
Favorite go-to movie? Oh my goodness. I'm going to say 50 First Dates.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one. That's a very good one. What is your go-to song?
My go-to song is... Oh my goodness. Hotel Service by Pitbull.
Oh, that's a good one. I love me some Pitbull. What is something you can't live without?
My friends and my family.
Nice. What is something in your ordinary daily life that makes your heart happy?
Music.
And what are you grateful for right now?
I am so grateful to be surrounded with people who lift me, who hear me, and that make me feel seen.
Love it. All right, Scott, one closing question. If you could challenge leaders everywhere to practice this one behavior that would create more human workplaces and equip everyone to show up as a leader, what would that be?
And to make everyone feel seen. Don't just do it as a part of the protocol. Do it because you're a human. You could do this in your workplace. You could do this at the Starbucks. It's one of the most fun things to do, is to take a moment to truly connect. Ooh, you're going to get me lit up. I remember finally realizing what this moment was in college, and I was in the elevator. I was like, every time I get in an elevator, I'm just going to talk to the person because it's almost weird, but you want to break the silence. And you see, as soon as you talk to someone or acknowledge someone or make them feel seen, most of the time, watch that person light up. And it's one of the gifts. It's the superpower that we all have. The next time you're at the grocery store and you're going through the checkout, have a genuine conversation with the person. Don't just make it a how are you good, how are you good? Hey, what'd you get up to this weekend? What was your favorite part? Seen any movies lately? Make that person feel seen because you don't know how long it has been since they've felt seen. Go first.
I love it. Well, so much richness in this conversation. Thank you for starting out the week and the year with such positivity. Thank you for the work you're doing. I hope everyone follows the DREAM framework. I think there's just richness. Some of it's just common sense that we forget about, and some of it's like, oh yeah, duh, no wonder why I'm struggling. So just thank you for simplifying it. Thank you for your authenticity and your humanness, and just much, much gratitude.
Thank you so much. And just cheers to everyone in their adventures. Let it begin.
I'm Rosie Ward, and this is Show Up as a Leader. To learn more, head over to peopleforwardnetwork.com and, of course, hit that follow button.